love to welcome Nadia from the Alatawneh tribe. Welcome, thank you so much for being here. She is an architect and has recently graduated from Tel Aviv University. And she has written her thesis about an unrecognized village in the Negev in the south of Palestine. This village has been destroyed 211 times in the last years and has also been rebuilt 211 times. She's going to talk about the history of the people of this village who were landlords and became landless.
You hear me? Oh, great. A little bit down. Firstly, I would like to thank Cafe Palestine for inviting me to be here and for the thought of it existing. And I would like to thank all of you guys for coming as well. It means a lot to see people from all over the world getting interested in our problem and situation in our lands. Let's begin. Firstly, I would like to explain what is a Bedouin. A Bedouin is a person who lives a nomadic lifestyle in the desert, which means they travel from one place to another according to the seasons, because they live through their animals. They need to shepherd them according to the greens of the land and the water as well. We all know that the desert have challenging ways to live in it, and the Bedouins are the most people who know how to live in these difficult situations. These are some old pictures of my people back in the 40s and even 30s in Beersheba territory, Bir Sabe, as we say in Arabic. We can see both men and women surviving and have their own social economical system in those lands, and how they manage from so little to have their own traditions of existing and having a sustainable life with this land. We can see women also in the markets and men as well. And this young girl also very well known as a Bedouin who knows to live the traditional life since a young age. Before the occupation, the Bedouins used to be approximately 90,000 people, from 90,000 to 100. These are old historic maps that I always use in my thesis. They are very important because they have three different backgrounds. One of them is actually from a Jewish Israeli who wrote it in a book, To Know the Land, Part 2, the Negev land. We call it Nakab, and it was in 1946. This one is in a British map in 1947, and the most important one in my eyes is the map of Arif al-Arif in 1934, which is a Jerusalem historian who used to live among the Bedouins in the old city of Bir Sabeh. And here we can see how the map is divided between the Bedouin tribes back then. Me, myself, I came from the Tayaha tribe, which we can see from the north of Palestine, northeast. In the 1900s, the Bedouins established the Bir Sabeh city. It was established by the Bedouins for the Bedouins. The lands used to be owned by Al-Azazmi tribe. They donated it, and the Bedouins donated their own money that they had actually so little of back then to build buildings such as the mosque and El Saraya. We will see it next. And this old fella here is actually my great-grandfather. He used to be the first mayor of Beersheba city. Here we can see El Saraya building. El Saraya is actually a function name of a building that is actually used for the tribe's sheikh. Every tribe has a leader, and they all gather around in this building to find solutions for the people. and they actually used to go even to Jerusalem, to the court there, and solve problems not only for the Bedouin community, but all the Palestinians as well. Sadly, this building we can't see anymore because in the British mandate they built also a police station around it. And sadly, the Israeli and the US have their own law of prohibiting seeing some places such like in Google Maps or satellites. Some of these places are actually, how they say, a bit vanished. So we can't see it from upon as well. Here we can see Beersheba, Bir Sabeh in 1970. We can see how the Bedouins used to actually even care about gardening the area, and we were modernate as well as the rest of Palestine. We all know how blooming Palestine was in the 20s, such as Jaffa for exporting their oranges, and Beersheba, we'll see next what they used to export. But as an architect, I always look at the streets, and they were very interesting that they actually calculated the main two roads. This is one of them as a cross, and they were 20 meters width, so they can actually pass with their animals as well. So we were friendly, human friendly, nature friendly, and animal friendly as well. In the British mandate, the Britons tried to actually let us write down our ownership of the lands in the tabu, which is a system to say how much land we owned. Of course, the Ottomans and the Britons didn't success controlling us Bedouins because we didn't believe of an upper power of us. We used to believe that we are the landlords, and our dignity didn't let us to actually trust those people who are strangers to come and control us and tell us how to do things in our own way. We used to have our own rules about lands and how we used to exchange lands between each other. Let's say if I want to buy a certain land or I want to mark a certain territory, I used to bring also my neighbors and we would mark our lands together, and it will be an inside agreement. And that's why a lot of Bedouins didn't register their lands in the tabu, because we didn't need that and we were afraid of the taxes. Back then we didn't have a lot of money and we didn't need it as well because we have our own systematic way of living with one another. This aerial picture is very important. It was made on a British airplane that went off from Egypt upon of the south of Nakab. And here we can see Al-Araqib village, especially in this area. This is Al-Fukhari Valley, and this is the territory of Al-Araqib. And we can see how the Bedouins used to do their own agriculture. They used to keep some lands empty to make it rest from one year to another, so the land could be still soil and full of richment ingredients, so our wheat and barley could also be good for the next years as well. This photo on the right, it's not sand, it's actually wheat and barley. Bedouins used to make more than 1/2 to 2/2 millions of tons of wheat, and we used to export them to more than 40 ships to Europe, especially to Britain. And this is another aerial picture in the 1930s that actually is also a proof that we used to have our own systematic way of living. A lot of you know that Bedouins live in tents, and of course, Bir Sabeh, it was not made for us to live in it. It was made to be a central station or a point for social, economical exchange. So a lot of people who used to live here are people from Gaza, from Egypt, from Al-Khalil, who used to wander and go by or actually stop for a visit. As well as Arif al-Arif, his house till today exists, but sadly now it's a male place. And this is another important picture that shows that all Bedouins all around used to go to Bir al-Sabah. It used to be a very important point. As you can see in this map, it used to be in the center between Gaza, Hebron, the north of Palestine, Sinai, Egypt, and Jordan as well. And that's why, let's say, the Israeli occupation, the first line of border they made was between Egypt, Sinai, and the south of Palestine. For us, Sinai was also a part of our culture because there are Bedouin tribes there as well. And we used to be all one. Here we can see also the Khalil Wadi, Hebron Wadi, that used to connect between Khalil and Gaza. A lot of our animals and camels used to drink and live on this wadi. Sadly, today, as an Israeli kind of way of controlling it, they blocked it and it's almost dried. We don't see it like this anymore. This is a very important document that the historian Salman Abu Sitteh made in 2003. It shows that the Bedouins used to own more than 12 million dunams, and after the war of 1948, after the occupation, less than 120,000 left for the Bedouins. The Nakba, it was not, of course, a fair fight for the Palestinians. The British gave up of trying to control us, and the Zionists were actually prepared for this war. Britons used to give them a lot of, how they say, guns, and they made them ready for the war because they also fought against Mussolini in Germany. There were more than 30,000 Zionists, that were كيف بيقولوا مسلح? Armed. Thank you. And after the war, only 10% of my people have left. Some of them, of course, have been slaughtered, died, and some of them, let's say, a part of my family now lives in Gaza, other parts are in Jordan, others are in Egypt as well. Here we can see the Israeli settlers when they invaded Bir al-Sabah. Sadly, today Arabs can't even buy a house there, even if they have an Israeli ID. And this is the Saraya building. We can see how they already tried to surround it. Today, even if you walk the street, you can't see it. And this is David Ben Gurion, and his dream was actually, if we want to make the Zionist dream come true and succeed occupying Palestine, we should get rid of all of the Arabs. So after the war, they did the siege area, the fence area, which was a wall that was not physical, but actually traumatic, and a military rule that lasted more than 20 years, just on the Bedouins, especially in the Negev area. When he came to a visit there, he saw a Jewish settlement, and he actually applauded them, and after a couple of years, he moved there and he built this house. And now it is a monument that they are proud of, and sadly a lot of tourists come by and they don't know the story of the land and the real landowners, and they go to the station as if it's something that, as the story says, this land was empty, it was for no one, and the Zionists came and they tried to make it greener and to make it full of life. This is El Siage area. As you can see, it is surrounded by this line. And in this map, you can see it in a small gray area. These establishments or local councils were later on made by the Israeli government, so they could put as much Bedouin as they can on as much little land they could. And the plan was, after that, to move us to Lud, and from Lud to kick us out to Jordan. Of course, they didn't succeed. In the 68, the Israeli government has decided, since they gave up and the military rule has ended in 1966, they started of thinking, how would we do establishments for the Bedouins, local councils, And they tried to do it firstly at Tel Sabah in 1969. And we can see these small, I say of them, packs of cigarettes, because they were so little, and they didn't actually ask the people what would they like to live in. They didn't care about our own systematic programma. And as you can see, some Bedouins still refused to live there. And sadly, it was harder for us to keep our traditional lifestyle, because in the 50s, the Israeli government actually made a special law of prohibiting raising black sheep. We were known that black sheep eat so little but give us so much wool, and from these wool we used to make our own clothing, our own houses, and even our own medicine from these special wools. Till today, we find it hard to find these sheep in our areas. And this is an old picture of an archaeological site next to Tel Sabah. This is the road that connects us to the new town. And this is just an evidence that people always used to live in that area. So after the military rule has been over, a lot of Bedouins wanted to go back to their own lands, and all of a sudden they were surprised that there are Zionist settlements instead. So there was no way of us going back to our lands, and we were also armless. We had nothing to do in our hands. This is a newspaper that my dad has wrote in it about the Bedouins actually asking and demanding for their lands to be back. And this is also Bedouins in front of the Beersheba court asking for a solution to live and have places to be in. So the most difficult situation that Bedouins used to live, every tribe aside that they have their own rules in between and their own privacy. We like our privacy as much as we are generous with our guests as well. And that thing even led to a lot of problems between Bedouins themselves, because we had so little land left. This is actually another photo in Yawm al-Ard, which is a day that we also sorrow of losing our land. And in this picture you can see also my grandfather sitting there, and people are trying to demand peacefully their lands back, or at least some of it. Sorry. So today there are more than 300,000 Bedouins, and we are 35% of the population in the south. As you can see, the map in this slide also always gets smaller and smaller, which means that 120,000 dunums we had left from that 12 million is shrinking as well. Here is the map in zoom in. You can see here Bir Sabah, that was fully emptied from Arab back then. And these gray areas are the governmental areas that the Israeli government has made. These green areas are the unrecognized villages that we live in the Negev. We have today 46 villages. Only 10 of them has been recognized. With the local councils that the government has made for us, and more than 35 villages that is still unrecognized. So the Israeli government's plan is to bring all these unrecognized villages and put them in our recognized villages, which means we will suffer more and more of the intensity of people who live on so little land, which even brings more social economical problems as well. Another plan of the Israeli government is actually, instead of these villages, to make Zionist settlements as well, so we can't actually expand our villages' territories as well. So today we live in three situations: the local councils that the Israeli government has made for us, the villages that are trying to be recognized in the Israeli Knesset, we demand for them, and the unrecognized villages, and some of them are very historic, like Al-Araqib itself. Sadly, we can see the poor situations of all these villages, even those ones that were established, let's say Tell al-Saba, that was established firstly in the 68, 69, they are the most poor village that are in occupied Palestine. We are on the lowest of the social economical ladder. These are some facts and numbers about the situation, and we can see the intensity of people who live on these lands comparing to the Zionists. And the most important point, that we are 35% of the population in the south, and we only have 10 villages, but the other side, they have more than 112. Even if the Bedouins want to live on these villages, the Jewish Zionist settlements, they are not welcomed easily. And some of them are being denied to actually buying land there and homes as well. So our situation in the unrecognized villages, we need to bring our own system of surviving. If it comes to the waters, the Israeli system also drags the waters from nature, from down of the earth. And electricity, we only could live on solar panels, which means at winter we are in a very difficult situation because there isn't as much sun as there is in summer. So Al-Araqib is one of these villages that are unrecognized. Since 2010, they have been destroying this village. The most important part of it is the graveyard that is actually being their own, one of their evidence of them belonging there before the occupation. Just remember these marks, because this is not the natural situations of the village. This is how the village used to be. And sadly, the JNF, which is the Jewish National Fund, that tries to steal our lands with the Israeli government as well, try to sell the dream or the lie of let's make the desert green, and it's upon our own lives and lands. So they do that as well to destroy our existence and to destroy our historic evidence that we used to be there as well. This is Aziz. This is Aziz, the son of Sheikh Sayyah, who's marking the area, and we can see before the JNF used to destroy these areas, we can see the rest of the family living nearby. Of course, being in an Israeli institute, I should always prove myself right with some evidence. And these are a lot of documents that I found about ownership of Al-Araqib. Some of them were late back in the 1800s. And one of the most important ones of them is actually this one here. We can see the first Israeli government election used to have a box inside of Al-Araqib, which means they knew and they approved the existence of Al-Araqib at first. Today, sadly, the unrecognized villages have no rights to vote, and they are the most people who suffer from this government, which is getting more extreme, as we can see at the news these days. And this is another document that shows how the military rule used to terrorize and ask people to move out their lands a year later. Here we have the timeline of Al-Araqib. We can see the left, some of the historic evidence go back, way back to the 1900s. The British mandate and the Egyptians used to battle back on these lands, and we can see them having Al-Turi cemetery, Nouri Al-Uqbi claim area. In 1948, there was a massacre there, and 21 Palestinian Bedouins were murdered back then. In 1953, the Israeli government made another law of saying if you are not on these lands, so, they will go to the Israeli ownership. But that was not fair because there was military rule back then. So a lot of people it was not in their hands to be actually on the land at that day. We can see that the GNF started working on these land and destroying it back in 1997. In 2004, we have a Zionist settlement named Giv'at Bar, which is another meaning of the name Al-Araqib, which means soft mountains, because that was the typography of the land back then. And that's the way that the Israeli government always established new Jewish towns. They give them the names of the old Arab villages as well. And in 2010, there was the first invading the village and destroying it with even military airplanes. So imagine the village was mostly women and children, because they had nowhere the women could work, or even the children had no school or hospitals or anything like that, and the men had to go miles and try to go and find work or something to support the family. And those people who were left in the village had to face these enormous terrorizing, traumatic power of the government with these airplanes and a lot of cops and a lot of trained dogs as well. Another thing that the Israelis used to make is actually destroying our own agriculture. They used to poison the lands as well, and our own, how they say, crops. Thank you. And it's funny that the same people who want to make the desert green and talking about the JNF dream that was established before the country occupied us are doing this to the same land that they always dreamed and aspired of occupying. This is Sayyah al-Turi. He is the leader of Al-Araqib tribe. Sadly, he is being attacked by the Israeli government. He has more than 19 cases against him from the Israeli courts themselves. As he said, at the end, I have an Israeli idea and I live in here, and they did recognize in Al-Araqib, but they act like I am a worldwide criminal with all these accusations. And of course, he was dragged into prison, and he has a lot of taxes to pay as well. Last time I was there, in the time that they destroyed it, number 209, a year before, I talked to his granddaughter. She was my age, and I told her, well, when are you going to sleep tonight, since that they destroyed it last night? She told me that the children would sleep at the cars because it's more safe for them, and she and the other women would sleep between the graves. Those graves saved them more than the dead people saved them more than the people who are alive. This is Dr. Awad Abu Freh. He was also born and raised in Al-Araqib. He's a doctor for biochemistry. He studied at Al-Technion, which is a university in Haifa. When he wanted to marry in the 90s, he built his own simple house. We don't build in stones because it's expensive, and we know it's going to get demolished, so we build them in very cheap materials that we could have from our surroundings. A day before his marriage, they came and they destroyed his house as well. And that's why, sadly, he and a lot of people would actually buy lands or houses in the local councils, but still have someone to live in their lands. He is also being watched by the Israeli government. When he wanted to take me there for a tour, he asked me if I had a jeep, because there are no roads there for sure. And I told him no, but why can't we go with your car? He said, my card is being watched and they know the number. And every time he goes there, it's like he is an invader of the Israeli lands. It's important to say that the Israeli government gave most of their lands in this area to the JNF, because it is a Zionist movement and it shall not give back the lands to the Arabs. So it doesn't make the Israeli government look bad in the people's eyes, and they would say, well, it's for JNF and it's foresting and it's making the desert bloom and green again. Not again, they didn't think it was green after all. This is the house of Awad, that he became a doctor from it. And this is Awad in the court with the son of Sayyah and Gilad al-Ghazi, who is a lawyer. He's a lefty, not a Zionist. He's against Zionism, and he's a lecturer at Tel Aviv University as well. So me and my dad went with Awad to see the German JNF forest that was actually made on the lands of Sayyah. He said, I woke up one day and all of a sudden I see these Germans and these Zionists celebrating, making the territory green again, and with all these European trees that they don't actually exist on this land. And I quote him, I still remember him saying it till now, that I see each and every tree of these as an invader, as a military person who's pointing his gun on me. We can see here a monument that was made as well, celebrating the relationships between the Israelis and the Germans. And we can see also, always in the media, the praises of people who come here, and as like they are so peaceful and they have done nothing wrong. Actually, they are being praised as they are so noble for this great goal of environmental and political relationships. Here we can see them having for each territory of German a place of memorial. And this stone, I remember Awad saying, instead of my grandfather's name being written on these, all of a sudden I see a German name that has nothing to do with this land. So I'm just gonna talk about it environmentally as well. These trees are actually not good to the heating that we have. The weather that we have in the desert is always warm and hot at summer, and that's why some of them are actually being burned by nature, which means they are environmentally making it worse. If it's not burned, they actually also have these gases, whether it's in the earth or it's on the winds as well. Here we can see also the establishments of the JNF. This is my father's village, Al-Jammame, that he was born in 1945. Sadly, we have nothing left to do there. There's a Jewish settlement next to it. And here we can say Bet Jibrin, that's also being vanished year after year, but we can see the remarks, the archaeological sites of the Bedouins who used to live there as well. So sadly, this dream also, the politicians in the Israeli government, the right extremists, always try to provoke us as well, as like be aware of the Bedouins coming and trying to stop us, these barbaric invaders who have nothing to do with Islam. They came from Jordan, they came from Egypt, just as like Palestine was empty, as like no one knew how much this place was important of connecting the Middle East with India for the British or people all over the world as well. So in response, me and my people, we did demonstrations. We asked for this protest, a friendly, peaceful protest with the lefties from the government. It was peaceful for probably 10 minutes, and all of a sudden we've seen them provoking us. I was as much as it was hard, it was very long hours. It should have been maybe for 1 hour or two, but it lasted till the end of the night. But I was very astonished and empowered by this generation that I am a part of as well, that we are being very aware of the situation. You can see that teenagers have live stream on Instagram or on Facebook because we know this video will help us more than the police, more than the government, because we know that we will be silenced, we will be attacked, and no one would believe our side. So at least we will let the world see our side of the story. And at the same time, a lot of our accounts have been silenced and blocked as well. So we try to always have another account just in case. As you can see in this picture, the elders are putting our children back because we are being provoked by the police and the militaries there. And our children, they are not having rocks in their hands because that's what they always accuse us in. We have our iPhones and smartphones with and cameras as well. And we can see the militaries having their bombs ready to attack. And when I arrived, it took me 20 minutes late because there were no straight way to go there and no transportations. So we need to walk a bit of mountains where me and my friends came from the university. And we've seen it like this. And we didn't believe our eyes because we knew it was a peaceful movement, and all of a sudden we came to a war zone. Me, myself, I've seen when I arrived a drone upon my head, and I thought, this is my activist friend who is a photographer and came to take pictures. All of a sudden this drone has arms and legs and has 6 gas grenades were thrown on us. Of course, they always try to detain our youngsters so they could traumatize them, and the next generation wouldn't be as strong as the older one as well, but that will not make us silence, and we will continue our resistance. It was, as much as it was hard, it was funny to see the way that we tried to stop these gas and bullets going through us. So let's say, for instance, old women used to give us onions so we can smell, so the gas doesn't ruin our eyes, or we would take the gas before it would go around and bury it on inside of the ground, or even throw it back at them. And that day we felt that we were unioned as well, and our generation realized that even having women and girls in front, it's actually a powerful thing in the media, and that's why we could see that the new generation has their own methods of resistance that are actually shows how much they are aware of the political and the media way of existing. So I will talk about my project briefly. It's named Absent Present because we are present on our lands, but we are absent when it comes to laws and situations and ownerships on the land itself. When I wanted to do my thesis, I wanted to go back to my own roots, not to do something modern and doesn't have to do anything with my land. So it was most importantly for me to restore the old programma and functions of the place. We can see that Bedouins used to have houses, tents, animal pens, gardens, large trees, wells, and cultivations. Our cultivations by seasons, as you can see as well. Some of our sustainable Bedouin architecture was like the haraba, which means how we could collect a lot of water since we have so little in the Nakab because of the climate, and how we used to take care of our gardening as well, the sonor. We used to have natural graves and human-made graves as well, as a way we can storage or have a place for our animals in the winter. As well as zunnar. The zunnar is actually a storage that we use inside of the grounds. We used to dig and then put some mud and rocks as well. And there we used to have our seeds for the rest of the year saved for the year ahead. The baike is important because a lot of people say that the Bedouins are nomads and they don't have a certain land. It's important to say and to know that the Bedouins in the Nakab are not nomads, we are semi-nomadic. That means we go and wander in our own territories, and the back was our stable home that we used to always go back to. But of course, we love our tents because they are also, the ventilation in it is very good, and the wool that we actually make is water resistant, so it absorbs the water and it doesn't go down on us if we are in it in winter. I went back to my grandpa's dream. He wanted to establish Al-Alatawneh village. Al-Alatawneh is my tribe, as I said. And this plan was not approved by the government because the governor was changed. It was more left, and all of a sudden it's right. And he brought some architects back then and told them how the Bedouins used to share their lands by families. You can see my grandfather is living on the top of the neighborhood, and then he has his sons next to him and daughters, and then the grandchildren as well. So all of my neighborhood is my family at the same time. And it's very important for us to have our agriculture and animals nearby as well. Just a second. So the programmas that was very important for me is people knowing that the Bedouins have their own private areas, as I said before, and the more public areas that used to sort all of the village, and stable functions and unstable because the Bedouins love nature and they love moving around with it. This is a village. I'm not going to go through it deeply because we're here to discuss about the owning of the land, not my thesis, my project. But we can see it's divided by the tribes. We have 3 different tribes and we have a common area for everyone, as well as a tourist area that could bring them jobs and economics revivement as well. If we go to the zoom in, we can see the housing and the villages as being surrounded one next to each other. And then we have the valley inside, El Fukhari Valley, and their own private area. Here we can see the villages area as well, the graves that they saved us. It was, I named them the heart of the project. And this area, which is where the rails goes and the main street that connects between the north and the south of Palestine, we have the tourist area as well, and this is our winter agriculture. So I'm going to make it clear that this project is a dream, is an utopia, because you know, our dilemma, we have a lawsuit for demanding for this land. Awad himself has a lawsuit for proving that this is his land. And it's been going for more than 10 years. Every time we prove and we almost win this lawsuit, the government puts it aside, or even it changes the qadi.
Lawyer,
the judge, thank you. And it cost them millions of shekels. Imagine 10 years in these lawsuits. So the only way we provide these monies, we actually donate for Awad. The only way we donate for him and we get updated is by his Facebook page. He always says that the status of the lawsuit is 1, 2, 3, for example, and the lawyers want this much money. And of course, for our economical, social ways, we're not that rich, so we try all together donate for his bank account as well. When it comes to the homes, I looked at Al-Araqib. These pictures are from Al-Araqib, the remainings of the places. And we can see that the territories between one landlord and another was actually plants. These plants, we don't see them at summer, but the first rainfall, they grow up, and all of a sudden we see a row of them beautifully one next to another as a gardening fence between the people themselves, and it was important for me to make it green and not cementic wall, and because we all know how much Palestinians are traumatized from the separation walls, either if it's in Gaza, if it's in the West Bank, or after the Bedouins were actually 20 years in the siege in the fence area. So this is a scheme about how the village is now living from materials that they have nearby. Of course, these houses are not strong; they're not that cementic. It's whatever they could manage. Abu Khalid was my inspiration. He was born before Al-Nakba. He was one of the few people who actually could work in the military rule. He had a car, and he used to have a paper from the military rule that proves that he could work. As like we can see Palestinians today from the checkpoints, that they need to work in the occupied areas. They need some documentation that they are approved from the Israeli government to work. Abu Khalid was as well. And before the occupation, I asked him, what do you remember from Al-Nakba? And he said that we knew that the Zionists were coming, and we were afraid and worried if they come nearby. All of a sudden, a few days before the war, we found that my uncle was slaughtered next to the village, and that's how they used to make these tactics to make us run away and not them killing the Palestinians. And they didn't move that night, so the night after, they burned their house upon them when they were sleeping, and after that they had to move to the siege area. So about his home and why it is my inspiration, as simple as it looks, maybe in your eyes, the story behind these rocks, that in his work he had to move things. So every time he knew about a destroyed village or a destroyed house, he would go there and collect these rocks. So these rocks of his house are actually from Jenin, Gaza, Nablus, from the south to the north, and I see it as a truly Palestinian house. And we can see that also from the domes that are for ventilation, and from the arcs that we can see even from the Ottoman architecture as well. This is this house scheme, and the most important function for his wife before him, and she would also always warn him building there, is the open areas. These open areas are separated to two. One is for the guests, because Bedouins used to always have guests passing by, and the desert was very hard to pass through it. So in the Bedouin traditions, we can have you as guests for 3 days without asking you why you are here, but we can always help you. And the third day, we would tell you, okay, what's your story and how can we help you? And he has rooms there as well. And this, the other open area is the family's areas, and where his wife also used to weave the Palestinian rugs as well. For the materials, I went back to the Palestinian original materials that we still till today use, because they are better for the ventilation. Because the rocks makes our houses warm at winter and colder at summer. So these rocks, some of them are from Jerusalem, some of them are from Al-Khalil, Hebron, and we mostly take from Al-Khalil because it's nearby. Before the occupation, it's like 10 minutes, 15 minutes away. After all these checkpoints, it's more than that. And here it's the scheme that I did between modern and non-modern. We can see some stable elements and non-stable elements, like these walls that we can see them closing, for providing more open space and closed space. And I made an area for the family, if the mother or the father wanted to have an office or a kindergarten nearby, and the family area the other side. Of course, I made, as I said before, the fences of the house are greens. And which greens did I choose? They are the ones that the Israeli government prohibits us from taking from nature, as like they are going to vanish, but they are very easily to raise. But still, we are till today prohibited to collect these, such as sage as well. And these are known for our traditional Palestinian dishes, and they are very healthy. So it is in our paramedic food table. So here we can see the Abu Khalid's house, the situation today, and the situation that I wish for my people, the utopia. Here we can see the village all together between the modern and between the non-modern. We can see the agriculture behind the houses, and the animals have their areas as well. And we have the solar system. The streets are behind the houses, so we can make it more safe for the children. And we have this pedestrian area because the open space is very important, and we are very social community, and we always have our weddings and social events in the middle of the common area of ours. So it's more a festive location for weddings, for example. And here we can see the neighborhood with some walking paths, so people could do some sports as well. The house between modern and not modern, we can see a traditional kitchen and a modern kitchen, and one can open in front of the other. And this is the view of the village in 3D drawings. So it's important to say that the Bedouin situation in the Negev is not only the one story of Palestine. There were more than 450 villages before the occupation that were vanished. Let's say now I live in Tel Aviv because I used to study in Tel Aviv. Before the establishment of Tel Aviv, there used to be 23 villages there itself. One of them is Sheikh Mwannis. The Sheikh Mwannis is the one that the university was established on. And more than once, the Israeli government tried to ruin and take over these graveyards as well. But we, the Arab Palestinian students, always do try to enrich one another and do a certain day that we would bring the new Arab students and non-Zionists as well, and let them know the territory and let the story from one generation to another. And that's it. I hope I didn't forget something. Thank you for listening.